The galaxy was a vast and complex place, filled with millions of stars, each representing a different world, a different people. The alien heiress and the disabled man stood at the heart of it all, surrounded by the remnants of an ancient palace that had been the symbol of power for centuries. Yet in this moment, power meant nothing. What mattered was the quiet understanding between them, the bond they had forged in defiance of a universe that had long judged them both. Days passed, and the weight of the decision began to settle in. As expected, the royal court had not taken kindly to the heiress's choice. Whispers grew louder, rumors spread like wildfire, and the tension in the kingdom was palpable. The people who had once praised her for her beauty and strength now questioned her judgment. How could she, the heir to the greatest throne in the galaxy, choose someone who had nothing but his heart? How could she defy centuries of tradition and the expectations of her royal bloodline? The disabled man knew that the challenges ahead would not be easy. He had spent so many years feeling weak and worthless, yet now he found himself standing at the center of a storm, with the world watching him, scrutinizing every move he made. The pressure was immense. He had no royal title, no army to command, and no kingdom to call his own. He was just a man who had been broken by life, and now he was expected to lead, to stand beside the alien heiress who had chosen him above all others. Despite his doubts, he had made a promise to her, a promise that he would stand by her side no matter what. He would not run from this responsibility. He would prove that strength came from within, not from a crown or a throne. But it was the alien heiress who felt the weight of the world the most. Every day she was reminded of the judgment she faced from her people, from her family, and even from the kings who had once competed for her heart. The whispers followed her wherever she went, their voices laced with disappointment and scorn. Yet, despite the anger and betrayal that threatened to overwhelm her, she remained resolute. She had made her choice, and she would not turn back. 1. Evening. As the stars shone brightly over the kingdom, the heiress and the disabled man stood together on the palace balcony. The world stretched out before them, a universe full of untold stories and untapped potential. The city below sparkled with lights, but in this moment, it was as if the entire galaxy had disappeared. The only thing that mattered was the connection they shared. "I never thought I would be here," the man said softly, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "I never thought I would be chosen by anyone, let alone by someone as powerful as you. I've always felt broken." The alien heiress turned to him, her eyes filled with understanding. "You're not broken," she replied gently. "You're whole in ways that they will never understand. You see the world in a way they never could. Your kindness, your wisdom, and your strength are things that cannot be measured by power or wealth." He looked down at his hands, the hands that had once held a sword, the hands that had once been strong. Now they felt weak, fragile, as if they could never be enough. But when he looked into her eyes, he saw something more. He saw a future, a possibility, a world where love could conquer all. "I wish I could believe that," he said quietly. "You will," she said, placing her hand over his. "Because what we have is real, and nothing in this universe is more powerful than the truth of what we share." She smiled softly, her fingers tracing the lines of his palm as if trying to anchor herself to him, to this moment. The world outside might have been against them, but here in the silence of the night they had something that was more enduring than anything else. Love. As time passed, their bond grew stronger, and the galaxy began to take notice. Slowly, the whispers of doubt turned into murmurs of curiosity. The people who had once dismissed the disabled man as unworthy began to see the true strength he possessed. They saw the way he stood by the alien heiress's side, not as a weakling, but as a partner. They saw the way he inspired others, not with force, but with kindness, wisdom, and humility. The alien heiress's decision, once considered a foolish rebellion, was now seen as an act of courage. It was an act that defied the norm and proved that true greatness was not defined by power or position. The disabled man's strength was not in his physical form, but in his ability to rise above the judgments of the world and embrace what was real and true. As the months passed, the once divided kingdom began to change. The people started to understand that true strength came from within, and that love, compassion, and integrity were the most powerful forces in the universe. The alien heiress, with her wisdom and her courage, had shown them the way, and the disabled man, with his unwavering spirit, had proven that no matter what the world might say, a person's worth was determined not by their body, but by the depth of their heart. One day in the great hall of the palace, surrounded by those who had once doubted them, the alien heiress and the disabled man stood together before the people. Their hands were intertwined, a symbol of the love that had brought them here. The people looked upon them with respect and admiration, no longer seeing the disabled man as weak or unworthy, but as a leader, a symbol of strength and courage. The moment was nothing short of a triumph. It was a triumph of love, of understanding, and of the power that comes when two people, regardless of their differences, stand together against the odds. The alien heiress had chosen him, and in doing so she had changed not only their world but the galaxy itself. As they stood before the crowd, the alien heiress looked at him, her heart full. "We have defied the universe," she said softly, "and in doing so we have created a new world, a world where love, not power, will reign." And as they looked out into the vast, star-filled sky, they knew that they had not just changed their world. They had changed the future of the galaxy, for love would always be the strongest force in the universe. The alien heiress turned back to the disabled man, her eyes softening. "I see in you something they do not see," she said quietly, so only he could hear. "I see strength, but not the kind they think matters. I see a heart that is pure and a spirit that cannot be broken. They look at you and see only weakness, but I see greatness. You are more than they could ever understand." The man was taken aback by her words. He had never seen himself as strong. In fact, he had spent most of his life feeling weak, useless, a burden to others. He had seen himself as someone who was broken, someone who had lost everything. But here, she was telling him that he was strong, that he had something valuable within him that others couldn't see. "Why me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why choose someone like me?" The heiress smiled gently, her eyes meeting his with a deep understanding. "Because you are not defined by your weakness, but by your strength of character. The others may be kings and warriors, but they are driven by pride, by power. You, on the other hand, have a heart that is kind, a mind that is sharp, and a soul that is unyielding. That is what makes you strong." The words hung in the air, and for the first time the man felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had always believed that strength came from the body, from the ability to fight and conquer, but now he realized that true strength came from within, from the courage to stand up for what was right, from the resilience to keep going even when everything seemed lost. As he stood there, hand in hand with the alien heiress, he felt a new sense of purpose. He was not just a disabled man, cast aside by society. He was a man with value, with a role to play in this world. And together with the alien heiress, they would change the galaxy, starting with the very hearts of the people who had once dismissed him. The room was still in shock, but the bond between them had been sealed. The heiress had made her choice, and she was unwavering. This decision would not only change their lives, but would also challenge the very foundation of what it meant to be strong, to be royal, and to be worthy of love. As the scene ended, the tension in the air was palpable. The question lingered in everyone's minds. Would the rest of the galaxy accept this choice? Would the kings and the people who had once ruled with pride and strength understand the deeper meaning of this decision? The heiress had chosen him, and it was a choice that no one could take back. The story of the disabled man and the alien heiress was just beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The room remained eerily quiet after the alien heiress's declaration. The powerful kings and princes stood motionless, their pride shattered, while whispers filled the air, buzzing with disbelief. Yet, in that stillness, Something remarkable was happening. The disabled man, once an outcast in his own world, now stood in the presence of the alien heiress, an unexpected yet undeniable connection between them. As they made their way to a more private part of the palace, away from the stunned onlookers, the heiress's expression softened. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing upon her, the eyes of the galaxy upon her shoulders. This was no ordinary choice. This was a choice that defied everything her people believed in, everything her family had taught her. She had chosen him, a man whose only strength lay in his spirit, not his body. She had chosen love over power, compassion over dominance, and truth over appearances. Once they reached a quieter, more secluded part of the palace, the heiress turned to the disabled man. She looked into his eyes, searching for something within them, a silent understanding between them. The world outside seemed to fade away, and for a brief moment there were no kings, no kingdoms, no expectations. It was just the two of them. "I know you must be wondering why I chose you," she said, her voice soft but unwavering. "And you must also be wondering what could possibly have led me to choose someone like you, someone so different from the kings and princes who are supposed to be my equals." The man stood in silence, unsure of what to say. His life had been filled with rejection, with people dismissing him because of his disability. He had grown used to being overlooked, his worth questioned, his value judged solely by his physical abilities or lack thereof. And yet here he was, standing before an alien heiress who had chosen him, a broken man over royalty. He could not comprehend it. He had no answer, no words to express the whirlwind of emotions stirring inside him. The heiress smiled, a faint glimmer of hope in her eyes. "It's true that I am a product of my world, of a society that values power and strength above all else. But I have always known that there is more to a person than their physical abilities, and there is more to ruling than force and control." She paused for a moment, allowing her words to settle between them before continuing. "You see," she said, "I have spent my entire life surrounded by kings and warriors, by men who boast of their strength, their conquests, their power. But over time, I began to see through it all. I began to see that their strength was not true strength. It was a mask, a facade. They ruled with fear, with dominance, and with selfish desires." The disabled man listened intently, still struggling to understand where this conversation was headed. Why him? What made him worthy of the attention of someone like her? "I had to learn the hard way," she continued, her voice growing quieter. "That true strength lies in the ability to love, to understand, and to stand by others even when they are at their lowest. True strength comes from being compassionate, from being able to see beyond what is visible on the surface. And that, I believe, is what makes you different from them." The man's heart began to race. Was she really saying this? Could it be possible that she saw something in him that no one else had ever seen? For the first time in his life, he felt like he was more than just a broken soldier. He felt like he mattered. The heiress took a step closer to him, her gaze unwavering. "You are not defined by your disability, nor are you defined by the opinions of others. You are defined by the strength of your heart, the purity of your soul, and your ability to rise above the judgments of the world around you." The disabled man stood there utterly speechless. He had never thought of himself in those terms before. He had always seen himself as less than others, a man who had lost everything and had nothing to offer. He had never considered that the very qualities that had caused him so much pain could actually be the things that made him special. The heiress continued, "When I first met you, I saw your heart. I saw your kindness, your intelligence, and your unwavering strength. You may not have the power to wield a sword, but you have the power to inspire others with your courage. That, to me, is true greatness." A tear welled up in the man's eye. He hadn't cried in years, not since the accident that had taken away his ability to walk. But now, standing before her, he felt a surge of emotion he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in his life, he felt truly seen. "But," the heiress added, her voice taking on a more serious tone, "there's something else. Something I've been keeping from everyone." My decision to choose you has not been an easy one. My people will never accept this. They will never understand why I chose a man who is not a king, a man who cannot walk. They will question my judgment, and they will question you." The man felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had always feared rejection, but now, with the heiress's words, that fear seemed to be coming to life. How could he possibly live up to her expectations when the entire galaxy would stand against them? The heiress took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his. "But I don't care about what they think. I care about what is right. I care about what is real. And you, more than anyone, have proven that you are worth more than all the kings and warriors combined." The moment hung between them, heavy with emotion. The man, overwhelmed by her words, could barely speak. All he could do was nod, unable to find the words that could express the depth of gratitude and awe he felt. This was the turning point in their journey. The truth had been revealed, and with it the heavy burden of societal expectations began to crumble. Together they would face the challenges that lay ahead, but in this moment, they knew that they had already made the right choice. The world would not understand, but that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that they had found something stronger than any kingdom or royal bloodline: true love. In a distant galaxy, where the laws of nature and the forces of power rule every living being's destiny, there existed a world unlike any other. On this planet, kingdoms rose and fell based on strength, and the right to rule was determined by one's ability to wield power and conquer. The royal families were known for their might, their armies, and their unyielding dominance. The people of the planet worshipped these kings and queens, believing that only the strongest should sit on the throne. At the heart of this world was the alien heiress, a beautiful, regal, and fiercely intelligent young woman. She was born into the most powerful family on the planet, with a legacy of strength that spanned generations. Her family ruled over vast lands, controlling armies, wealth, and influence. Everyone expected her to choose a partner from the strongest, most respected kings in the galaxy. After all, it was only natural for someone of her stature to marry someone worthy of her title. The heiress had grown up in this world of power, surrounded by men who believed that their physical strength made them superior. They were kings of different planets, lords of vast domains, and champions of their people. They prided themselves on their conquests, their armies, and their ability to dominate any situation. It was said that to be considered worthy of the alien heiress's hand in marriage, one had to be not only physically strong, but also politically influential and wealthy. But the heiress had always felt out of place in this world. She admired strength, yes, but not just physical power. She admired courage, intelligence, and kindness, qualities she felt were often overlooked in a world obsessed with dominance. Despite her royal blood, she had always believed that true greatness came from within, not from the ability to rule with force. The time had come for her to choose a mate. This was not just any decision. It was a matter of legacy. Her choice would influence the future of the galaxy, and her family expected her to choose wisely. Her people were looking to her to make the right decision, to secure their future by choosing the strongest king who could rule beside her. As the heiress sat upon her throne in the grand palace, a long hall filled with powerful kings and princes waited before her. Each one stood tall, exuding confidence and power. They were dressed in the finest armor, their royal insignia gleaming in the soft light of the grand chamber. Their eyes were fixed on her, each one hoping to catch her attention and prove their worth. They knew that only one would be chosen, and it would mean everything: power, wealth, and an everlasting legacy. At the front of the room stood a tall and imposing figure, King Solon, the leader of the largest and most powerful kingdom in the galaxy. His golden armor shone like the sun, and his piercing blue eyes revealed the kind of strength that had won him many battles. To his left stood Prince Drax, a warrior known for his brutal tactics and unmatched skill in combat. His muscular frame and stern expression made it clear that he was a king in the making. Behind them were others, kings and princes, each more powerful than the last. But despite their strength and influence, there was one person in the room who did not belong. He stood quietly at the back, away from the powerful leaders and warriors, trying not to draw attention to himself. The disabled man. Once he had been a soldier, a warrior who fought valiantly for his planet. He had been strong, fierce, and full of life. But everything changed during one fateful battle. He had been gravely injured, paralyzed from the waist down. Once hailed as a hero, he now lived his life in quiet humility, never expecting the attention of royalty. His days were spent in solitude, living with his memories of a life that was now far beyond his reach. He was no longer the strong man he once was, but he was still powerful in ways that others could not see. His heart was pure, his mind sharp, and his spirit unbreakable. But in a world where strength meant everything, he was considered weak. The people of his planet treated him with pity, and most of the royals dismissed him as insignificant. But he held on to his belief that true strength was not measured by one's physical abilities. Instead, it was measured by the courage to do what was right, to protect the weak, and to stand firm in the face of adversity. As the alien heiress observed the room full of kings and princes, her eyes fell upon him. He was so different from the others, so much weaker in appearance, yet something about him caught her attention. She had heard stories about him, tales of his bravery in battle, his intelligence, and his unshakable moral compass. Despite his disability, he was known for his wisdom and kindness. He was not a king, but his spirit was regal. She could sense the depth of his character, and it intrigued her. The room grew silent as the moment of decision approached. The alien, Heiress, rose from her throne, her golden gown flowing behind her like a ray of light. All eyes were on her as she moved toward the center of the room, her gaze sweeping over the kings and princes who had come to claim her. They all stood taller, straighter, hoping to be the one she chose. But instead of stopping in front of the powerful kings, she walked past them. Her steps were deliberate, measured, and with each one the tension in the room grew. The audience could not believe what they were witnessing. Why wasn't she stopping? Why wasn't she choosing one of the kings? Her eyes locked onto the disabled man standing quietly at the back, and with a single gesture, she motioned for him to step forward. A gasp filled the room. The kings and princes were stunned, and the entire court was in shock. Why would she choose him? He was weak, he was disabled, and he was not a king. He was nothing like the powerful rulers who stood before her. But as he slowly made his way forward, the alien heiress smiled. She had made her choice, and it was one that would change everything. The entire room fell silent. No one knew what to think. How could she choose someone like him over kings who had the power to conquer worlds? It was a decision that no one could have predicted, and it would set the stage for a love story that would defy the very nature of power, royalty, and strength. The grand hall was filled with murmurs, gasps of disbelief, and quiet whispers. The room, once alive with the sounds of powerful men vying for the attention of the alien heiress, now fell silent. The alien heiress had made her choice, and it was not what anyone had expected. She had chosen the disabled man over kings and princes, over the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. The king and princes stood frozen in shock, their once proud faces now pale with disbelief. King Solon, the mightiest of them all, clenched his fists, his jaw tightening in anger and frustration. His eyes burned with a fierce intensity, and his pride was wounded. He had always been the one to win, always the strongest, the most feared. How could he, the conqueror of many worlds, be passed over for someone who could barely stand? It was a blow to his ego, something he could not comprehend. Prince Drax, the second in line for the throne of the greatest kingdom, stared at the disabled man with contempt. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the man's frail form as if trying to find any reason, any explanation for why he was chosen. But there was none. The man had no armor, no weapons, and no royal blood. He was simply a man who had been broken, a man who had been cast aside by society. But it was the alien heiress who stood at the center of it all, looking calm and composed, as if she had made the most natural decision in the world. She had chosen him, not because of his physical strength, but because of something deeper, something none of the others had seen. There was a quiet confidence in her gaze, a sense of knowing that the others did not have. The heiress turned her gaze toward the disabled man as he walked toward her. His movements were slow and deliberate, but there was a dignity in his every step. The world around him seemed to fade away, and all that mattered was the bond between them. He was not walking toward a queen, nor was he walking toward a throne. He was walking toward her as an equal. As he reached the center of the room, he stopped, unsure of what to say. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions. He had never dreamed of being in this position. He had never thought he would stand in front of royalty, let alone be chosen by an heiress. Yet here he was, the center of attention, the one everyone was watching. He felt small, out of place, but there was something inside him that told him to stand tall. This moment, as unexpected as it was his to embrace. The heiress extended her hand to him, her fingers gliding through the air like a soft breeze. The room held its breath as he reached out to take her hand. The moment their fingers touched, there was a ripple of energy, something unexplainable, a bond that neither of them fully understood, but both could feel. It was as though the universe itself had conspired to bring them together, to create a connection that could not be broken by the judgments of others. Without a word, the heiress turned toward the assembled kings and princes, her expression now serious and determined. She raised her voice, her words cutting through the silence of the room. "I have made my choice," she said, her tone calm but resolute, "and I stand by it." The kings and princes, still in shock, were unable to respond. They had been humiliated and their pride had been shattered. How could they challenge her decision? She was the heiress to the throne, and it was her right to choose whom she would marry. But the fact that she had chosen a man who was not a king, not a conqueror, was beyond their understanding.